What's up, everybody? Metal Dave Glessner here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by a central figure in the Austin music scene. Dave Prewitt is with us. Dave has been capturing live music here in Austin for almost 40 years, dating all the way back to a huge camera that he held on his shoulders and taped with VHS tapes. He's got an archive that you wouldn't believe, and almost 4 decades worth of live music here in Austin. And we finally got him on the show. We've been wanting to have him on the show for a while. We've known him for years. We know he's got great content. He's got great stories to tell. So we're happy to finally have him with us today.
The thing, and we kind of sketch, we talk a little bit about Bloody and Bruised, the untold story of the back room, the Penny Rock Productions film that's we're hoping gets into South by Southwest Film Festival here in March coming up.
Yeah.
The reason is because I feel like, as far as the archival footage that Dave Prewitt, our guest today, has, where else would they have gone to?
Yeah.
I mean, how many video dudes are there? You know, video dude, you know, who do you call? Who's the dude that you call who was there at the back room every week taping everything?
Yeah, and not just the back room, every live music venue in Austin. And of course, you know, those are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
Dave's been to all of them.
But specific, and yes, and I'm not dumbing down any of that at all. But the fact that if you're going to make a film about the old Antones when it was on Guadalupe Street.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had a camera on his back then. He may have. Shit, if we're talking about Dave Prewitt. But if you want to make a movie about that old Antones, I bet he has plenty of footage for them to use. That's our point, both respective points.
Yeah.
Anyway,
for as long as I can remember going to shows in Austin, you could always find Dave standing on a table or off to the side of the stage or whatever. He always was there and had a camera rolling. And that's just the shows I was at. So he was doing that all, multiple days a week. I think he said 4 or 5 nights a week. He was out on the town for years and years and years and years. So you add all that up, and he's got more VHS tapes and now digital files, etc. I mean, the library's just got to be mind blowing if you go from A to Z.
I feel like, and I've been talking about this for years, there's not a prestigious enough award that you could give to someone like Dave Prewitt.
Well said. Yeah.
I don't think it exists of how important it is for someone to be in the underground as well as popular artists too, having a video show. And it's like having a fanzine. If someone subscribes to a punk rock fanzine, it costs 50 cents or $1 or something back in the day, they're not getting rich off of that. They probably gave it away. They never made their quarters or their 75 cents after printing in the early 80s. It's not a cash business.
No, it's not. And that one of the things I mentioned in the show is, I can't believe his stamina. He's our age, and he's been going out 4 or 5 nights a week for almost 40 years. I can't do that anymore. And I'm not lugging a camera. Now the cameras are much smaller, of course, and it's a little bit more manageable, but that's the kind of dedication we're talking about. And as you said, he's not getting paid for this. There's not a lot of money involved, if any. And he's just that passionate about it.
He has won some awards. He has apparently he's got 2 Billboard awards.
Yeah,
and more. Awards. But I just don't think as far as like what should be appreciated about Dave Prewitt and his gang.
Yeah,
I don't think that you can. I don't have words for it.
Yeah,
it
really is. there are no words for it. I mean,
I don't
what more can I
understand
say? 40
Yeah.
years in the trenches every night, 40 years.
Just to document live rock and roll music is you could put it at that, but it's more than that. I mean, he has I think I used the three different words: uh, legacy, infamous, famous, whatever it is about his last video interview that Bill Hicks, the comedian. That was Bill Hicks's last video interview on Dave's show,
Yeah.
and it's infamous or famous. You know whatever the correct word is, because holy shit,
Yeah.
and no one knew. Bill Hicks didn't. No one, next thing you know, he was passed on, and it's terrible. On that note, we have to mention Nathan Oliveris, who was Dave Prewitt's partner in crime and pretty much the cheerleader, the go-getter, and pretty much the juice on his crew, who has recently passed and will just be incredibly missed. And once again, in the movie I spoke of, Bloody and Bruised: The Untold Story of the Back Room, we mentioned the trailers and the short film they're using for promo and stuff. Without Nathan Oliveris and Dave Prewitt's footage, it wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah.
So
massive contribution.
Yeah, it's incredible. So Dave Prewitt is such a good dude. He is such a good dude, man. He has nothing but love and respect for his community and for the art being created. His sons are talented. He has contributed in in that way too, that his offspring is part of our blood and his blood, and it's in the water, man. Ladies and gentlemen, he's an incredible person. He is one of the biggest music archivists in the Austin, Texas live music capital of the world. His name is Dave Prewitt on the Talk Louder podcast. How did you get into basically it's a loaded question and you can take as long as you want to answer it. How did you get into public access? How did you get into video production, audio video production? Because it's not, at this point, it's not just, as we are well up to our necks in with technical shit with mixing the Watchtower stuff. But the point that I'm getting at is, how did you get into the AV and TV and hosting? And yeah, we'll start with that.
Yeah, man, that's a handful for sure. God, I guess it really kind of goes back to early 80s whenever VHS cameras came out. My grandfather bought me one, like, it was the size of a suitcase. And I took it around in Llano where I was living growing up and probably videotaped friends and, radio stations that I was listening to, KTSA back in the day, and just having fun with a video camera, and that grew into, as I got into Austin at age 18, basically flipping on the TV, and you would see tons of access programs on, and all sorts of footage was happening. A lot of political, a lot of religious, but there were some stalwarts doing music, man. Kevin Roberts, Sue Cole, and even the television guy, Scott Spurlock, were all doing like TV programs. Hank Sinatra, Texas Music Show. There was all these music shows, and I would see local bands on there, and I was like, that's cool, and I would always watch. But I had one of those suitcase VHS machines and lugged it around on my shoulder when I met this local band, probably 86, 87, called Mud Pie. And, they were kind of a Southern rock, half cover, half original band. And I'd go videotape their gigs, and we'd sit around the couch and get a case the weekend after the gig and slam beers and watch the show. And then I was like, how do I get that on that channel? And I'd say that was about 87 when I went to the Dougherty Arts Center, which was giving the lessons at the time, and most of the access programs came out of the Dougherty Arts Center.
Isn't that place, I'm sorry to interrupt, which I'm really good at, but isn't the Dougherty Arts Center over there by Palmer?
Yes.
Like where, sort of behind where the old Austin City Coliseum used to be.
100%.
Wow,
Yes.
I passed by that. Yeah, I used to pass by there on a daily fucking basis. That's hallowed ground there because the original Waterloo Records was right there. That's such a cool neighborhood right there, close to Zilker and all that. I passed by that place all the time. I had no idea what the hell that was. I just thought it was some fancy yoga studio or something.
Yeah, and it's still doing great stuff. A lot of art comes there,
Okay.
It's a good place, but that's where they were located at the time. And I took a camera course, and I don't know, man, it felt pretty daunting because it wasn't my suitcase. It was new, and it had wires and a portable machine, and it felt very challenging. So I was like, all right, let me get my suitcase. And I went out and probably about that time started hitting the back room a lot. And we all remember, we're veterans of the back room, and we know how they put bills together, and like you could see 4 bands 7 nights a week and hit record, man. And so I started documenting every show I went to and started having many more beers on the weekends with bands and watching the videos on my couch. Fast forward probably 3 years of that, and I've got just cases of tapes and stuff. I'm like, all right, I got to figure this out, man. And late 89, I went to the access facility again, and I was like, what do I need to do? Because I got all this stuff and I really want to be one of those shows that I watch, So they said, oh, let me see, what's your name? Oh yeah, this is probably a good time for you to take an edit course, because if you don't do anything in 3 years, we purge the records. I'm like, sign me up for the edit course. And so Sue Cole gave me the edit class, and I learned how to put shows together. So in probably mid 89, I started rolling those VHS tapes over to these big broadcast tapes that were called U-matic videotapes, and they were 30-minute programs. We aired on Friday and Saturdays. I want to say it was 5:30 to 6 in the afternoon from about June of 89 until we went live at the end of that year. And first show was Pariah, of course. And
nice.
Yeah, we had to do Near Dark and the drill. And that's what we were doing, man. And those shows caught ground, and I was like, okay, that's cool. But I see these call-ins. Oh, how do I do that? And so I took the studio courses. I took the advanced editing courses. And in 1990, we went live. And I was like, man, I'm doing local music. Who's going to be my biggest audience? And I'm like, that's going to be people like after midnight. And so I shot for Saturday nights when people were getting home from gigs. And at the time, it was kind of unlimited with the airtime that you would get. So I chose midnight to 4 a.m. I don't know what I was thinking and how I did that, but 4 hours every week, man. Oh, and yeah, sure enough, man.
Is this capsize we're talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Capsize is my heart and is my passion. Raw time came around as more of a have to kind of thing. And that's a whole nother story. So, we'd get on there and we'd play videos, and people would always be like, hey, dude, can you play some Metallica? I'm like, nope, as soon as they move to Texas. Hey, man, will you play Van Halen? Nope, as soon as they move to Texas. It's all Texas music. So we push that envelope. I'm like, here's some more bands you haven't heard of. And, they're like, oh, that band that you just played, what were they called? Fuck you, fat guy. And I was like, cool.
Right. It was, let me pause for a second and say the glutton for punishment hat you chose to wear by going live and taking phone calls. Because you know, when you throw yourself out there like that, you got big balls, because I'm looking for the button on social media in modern times. I'm looking for the button that says no comments. I'm not asking you for a review of shit. You like it, you follow it. You don't like it, you fuck off, right? So the fact that you are, as an artist, technically you're like an MC video. I don't want to say a VJ. It's kind of what you are, but you're kind of like a DJ, a VJ, a host. All of these words come to mind, but you're also on the technical side of it. What?
Yeah.
What was that?
A cultivator.
Okay.
Cultivator, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, because you did. Let me just call it that. You did create culture during a time that I feel like Austin needed a culture and was budding as its own sort of like underground rock culture between. Sure, we mentioned the back room, and we can talk about the back room for hours. But you had the Black Cat, and you had all of 6th Street was around that time. It was still cool to be on 6th Street and play a gig on 6th Street.
Yep.
And all those years, South by Southwest coming around. What did you have to do to film bands that came through during South by? Did you have to do anything different for your show?
Well, gain momentum. I guess win over Margaret Mosier's heart was kind of what I felt like did it. And that was definitely not by intention. I've never done anything that we've done because I wanted to get someone's attention other than everybody. But she took a real liking to what we did. And I guess that made us cool for that little circuit, right? So Casey Monahan, all those Texas cool people, man, were big supporters of what I did. And so early on, I'd say it wasn't really so much early on for South by, because we were always, you know, the drill, man. We were the kids in black. We didn't like want to be on the cool team, you know, but they reached out and were like, hey, do you want to cover some of South by? And I'm like, I guess so. Do I get to pick where I want to go? And and they're like, here's a badge. I'm like, oh, okay. And then the first one on to the last one that I did, it became increasingly like you might expect it to be. It was like, okay, well, fill out the thing. Now you got to apply. I'm like, all right, cool. What, I'm going to get one, right? Yeah. Just apply. And then it just became like, by the time I got to the end of it, the last 2 South bys that I officially was involved with, it was, here's the badge, but you can only tape, 15 seconds of video, and we need to review everything you're doing. I'm like, see ya.
Right. Yeah. That was one of my questions. It was easy for you to say sayonara.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they made it easy for you to go. It was time for you to go, probably.
Yeah.
How long was Capsize on the air?
Oh, man. Well, we're finally back, so it's kind of, it's a work in progress. But we went from 1990 to 2016 or something, I think, continuous. And then we turned into Dave TV for a hot minute after I took a break. The facility, there's a lot of reasons, of course, burnout being one of them, but the facility that they had at the time and the management they had at the time were not putting any of the monies that they were given by the city, which is, by the way, how they function. The city has a grant that they give them, and now they couple that with training, paying people for to train for classes and all that stuff
to get a credit.
But so they get money from the city, and it wasn't being used appropriately. So the gear at the studio was breaking down. So I'd try to go on the air and do a live show and look like an idiot because all their gear was broke. And I'm like, man, it's getting to the day and age where I can go buy gear and do this on my own.
Yeah.
So I had already started amassing gear in about 2001. And Chris Carrillo and I were going out with a couple of like 8mm camcorders and mini DV camcorders and mini disc recorder and going to clubs. And I was putting that at home on my computer back in 2001. So I was like, I know I can do this. I don't need the studio. And that I took a break, you know. It still wasn't really, I did a lot of things quick on raw time, for instance, because it kind of is similar to what happened with doing it on my own. You know, the play Metallica, play Van Halen, whatever, like I wanted to have as many people seeing what I did as possible. So, you know, you get a bigger crowd, of course, right? And I asked Scott Spurlock from Dolovision, well, how do you play those music videos? Because he played, you know, Metallica, Van Halen, you name it. And he said, just write the labels and tell them you have airtime and send them a copy of the show. So I did just that. And Raw Time was born in 91. And I did Raw Time probably till 07, it feels like. And
Wow.
one part I didn't, since we're in that pool, one thing I didn't address is being on the air. It's not like I ever really wanted to be on the camera, but several things made that be a thing. And Capsize, I was on because I knew the bands and I started to talk to them. And then it was about 91, I hired Nathan to do the show. I say hired, we got big zeros for our pay, of course. So, but Nathan joined the show and he started interviewing bands, and it got to probably half a dozen times over the decades of Capsize that I said, nah, dude, you're way too high to do this. You're asking stupid questions. You're doing whatever, that I let him go. And I had to come in because I felt like the questions being asked weren't relevant. And so I always had this vision of what needed to be said. So I was like, I feel bad getting someone down here for free and then telling them don't do it. So I ended up being the guy 9 times out of 10. But when I did Raw Time, I wanted another face. So we went through numerous people on Raw Time to try to give it another identity. So, but back to, you know, getting away from it and doing it on my own, you know, it led to a lot of opportunities and things. While I had been the first show in the 90s when we were cool to beat Austin City Limits in the Austin Chronicle Music Poll, which we did 3 times, that was great. In that very same few years, I won 2 Billboard Magazine awards. So I was like, dude, short of the statue Jason wants to build me, I'm set, man.
Well, let's talk about that. And I love the joke because you wouldn't have used it as a joke if it wasn't a running joke between at least you and me.
Yeah, totally.
But it's been one of the things that I sort of in the past have said on stage in the mic in front of hundreds and hundreds of people for years now, that, you know, why isn't there a grant under your name? Why aren't you being recognized in another way other than just getting a $5 frame with a Xerox copy of a yay, you won again in the Austin Chronicle Awards for being a cool on public access television host, yada yada? Because I feel like it's not enough. You are an artist. You entertained this town for decades and still are. And now you're online. So it's like whoever in globally wants to check it out, they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got these big shoes that you didn't even buy. That you just walk around in them. And I just think that there's something to, you know, and people can make all the Wayne's World jokes they want. If you were here and you understood what, you know, you and your show and all of your whole team, you and Nathan especially, because that's when I feel like it started to get big and it became important. The questions that Nathan might have been asking artists, they should have been, you know, dialed in. But I think during that time, you guys, it became a real thing in my eyes. It became like, okay, people are starting to pay attention to you guys. And that's probably why you were like, hey dude, you can't you're too high. You can't. I know you're
Yeah.
having fun, bro, but hey, man.
At some point it starts to become at least semi-professional, right? This kind of it starts off with Dave having an interest in doing this, and he's kind of doing it as a hobby. Then it gets some traction, then it gets an audience, and then you go, wow, I might need to represent myself a little better, or I might need to, play some of the game, with the South bys and whatever, and maybe the clubs have some politics or at work. And so you start to make concessions, even though you don't really want to, because it's the way to get to the next level. And so I wanted to know.
I'm just saying I can't complain about the taste if I don't try it.
Yeah, yeah. I think what Jason is saying, at least in my mind, I'm following his question. And I feel like, we are in Austin, Texas. This is called the live music capital of the world. You are arguably the biggest archivist in this city. And it seems to me that a city that promotes itself as a live music capital would look at a guy like you and maybe offer some sort of position on the, I don't even know what it is, but don't we have a music, some sort of organization? What does Casey Monahan run? What's that organization?
Well, I think he stepped down, but yeah, he was with the Texas music folks. I wish there was. I am open to it. I am absolutely of the mind where I used to kind of avoid this whole thing, but I'm definitely more open to it in my age. But
well, it's time. It's time for you to think like that. I think is what Dave is kind of saying roundabout.
Yeah.
Is that it turns professional, and there are doors that are either going to open to you if you want them to, if you want to answer the call, or it would be a phone call away, and they would go, "Yeah, Dave Prewitt, I've been hoping you would call us and join us."
It would be great, and I've tried a few things. Unfortunately, Nathan's gone now, and it'll never be the same.
No.
And I don't want to be gone and not see all this work that I say we, because it's not me, it's all the crew members, it's all the bands, it's all the clubs. So all this work that we have done not get recognized in some way and just be boxes that my family have to go through and decide what to do with. So I have reached out to like the Texas Music Archives and things like that and been like, I have got ungodly amounts of stuff. What can you do? And they're like, oh, bring us 3 or 4 of them. I'm like, you don't understand.
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about Capsize real quick. Just here's the nerd in me. The spelling. Why did you go with the unusual spelling? Was there something else already called Capsize, so you had to spell it differently, or you just trying to keep Austin weird, or what?
Yep, no, there's absolutely a story. So Wayne Keith, I had roomed with Wayne Keith when I was, oh God, you remember Drumstick Wayne, don't you, Jason?
Yeah.
So he and I roomed, and crazy partier. I saw him just a few years ago, so I know he's still the same.
Okay, far out.
Unfortunately, all those drumsticks burned in a fire, so there's that.
Yeah, I remember that.
How did you get the name? Tell me about the nickname Drumstick Wayne before you move on.
Oh, man, that dude.
Where do you start? Yeah.
Probably more shows than me. Like when I was before TV, I subbed for Corey and Ray on the KTSB Metal Show. And like, that was what, 87, 88 or something like that, it feels like. And, he and I had been already going to shows forever. So I'm not sure when he started, but every band, he would stay to the end and not leave until the drummer or the tech got him a drumstick. And then he had to go get it signed. And then he had them on his wall. They were very well placed. And I don't even know the number. I'm sure he could tell you 3,416.
Yeah.
But he had literally thousands of drumsticks from decades of live music. And I mean, everybody from Watchtower Pariah, Near Dark, all the way up to the Allman Brothers and Robert Plant and everybody in the middle.
So I have a quick story about Drumstick Wayne, and there is a, well, it's roundabout. So there is, I want to say, one of your Dangerous Toys shows in the early 90s, and I'm pretty sure it was at the Back Room. And I think that we had left the stage and we're toweling off and probably going to come back out and do another song. And the cameras are still rolling, audio is still rolling, still recording. And I hear in the background, "Get that stick.
Yes.
Get that stick. Get over and over 100 times." It wasn't like one more song. All I heard was, "Get that stick." Off camera, Wayne's not in the shot, I don't believe, but that's all I hear. And that's Drumstick Wayne.
Yeah, he is ruthless. It didn't matter.
Right.
It was only him.
Down to where he had no manners, didn't give a shit. He was going to bother everyone in the house until he got what he needed.
God bless the man.
Yeah,
So how did that lead to the spelling of capsize?
He and I, this was in the period where I had been archiving all sorts of shows from bands that I went to see in the VHS tapes and going through the courses. And now I've got this opportunity to do a show. What do I call it? And so, so many layers to it, but essentially CAP is capital of Texas, right? Austin. So CAP, eyes on Texas music. So CAP's eyes. The Z's are capitalized because who's from Texas? ZZ Top.
Yeah.
The imagery was as many Texas things as we could think of, and we kind of came at Beverly Barrington with it and went, "Here's our ideas, do something."
Yeah.
And
Igniter Beverly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know she did that logo for y'all.
She did, man.
That's rad.
And we gave her $50 1988.
All right.
And it's, I wish I could give her more. I sent her a message recently, actually, because the P is no longer acceptable as a so the C was a coral snake.
Okay.
The A was the capital of Texas. The P was a Cowboys noose, which doesn't get received real well anymore. So,
right. Because it looks like something else, but it's a lasso.
Yeah, it's a lasso.
It's a lasso. Right.
So I've photoshopped something in there since I brought the show back, just so I can still use it. And I've messaged her about what do we do. So maybe one day there'll be an amendment. But so she draw the skull of the cow with the Y for the horns as they come out and meet the Z, and then two bony E's in there. So that's the whole thing, man.
What was the P that you can't use the P?
What is it?
It's the lasso.
Yeah,
Oh, so it was the lasso that you can't. Yeah, that was the P.
Took
Okay.
the P out.
All right.
Yeah. So in the early days, how many nights a week would you say you were out filming gigs? Just to give people some perspective here.
4 or 5 on a slow week.
Wow. That's insane, man.
With no paycheck.
No paycheck.
So let me set this up too. I called you an artist earlier, and don't throw anything at me for calling you an artist, but
I'll take it.
Here's the deal is when you're in a band and all of the work that you're doing before you get to the studio, to rehearsal, to the show, you're spending your own money. And then the money that you make at a show could be zero. It could be enough to buy dinner or a little bit of gas, but you're not getting compensated for the money you've spent on guitar strings and sticks and equipment and cables and gas and food to survive on the days that you're not playing, and you have a day job. So I put who you are and your crew. You guys are working on your art in between working your day job and taking care of your kids and your families and your mortgages and things like that. Just like a musician, you're creating material that is, even though it is, the songs are so the bands and the musicians' intellectual property, but the editing and the classes you took and the knowledge and that's your intellectual property. Your logo and your banner and your umbrella and your company and your people and these are personalities. Those are like members of your band. I've always thought of it that way, and I haven't had an avenue to express that to you other than here on Talk Louder. Did you ever feel, did you ever think it was like that before? Like you and your crew and your people or whoever you're dragging out. Now it's your son. You're dragging everyone out to work, whoever will hold a microphone boom or hold a camera or run a cable or,
Yeah. It's always been family, whether, we're talking about blood or not. Like
Yeah.
everyone that came out and worked on the show is
Yeah.
family. And these days, it's essentially old Bitty James and
Yep.
me. And that's it. And
Wow.
the two of us do the show that's seen weekly these days. I am entertaining since Nathan passed a person to come in because I do need another set of hands. And we've had a couple people come and go, haven't locked one down to give their life blood every Sunday. And that's something that should be said. It's not just like, we're going to do this a couple times a month. It's every Sunday we tape. And all those years was every Saturday night we were at the studio, every Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I missed gigs, that I would have loved to have seen, opportunities with friends and families just to do the show. And that alone was a sacrifice, as it is to this day. I shoot it on Sunday morning. I edit it Monday, Tuesday, turn it in Tuesday night, and it airs not the following Saturday, but essentially 13 days after we tape it, the show is aired. We do it taped now because of things like Dave said, where you got to turn it up a notch and be more satisfied with the end product. Call it professional, call it learning what you're doing, call it what you want. But we've always been family. And I think it was not until I met my beautiful bride that I embraced the term artist.
Well, one I just pinned on your sleeve, but yeah, you've always been an artist to me.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
man.
I can totally appreciate the level of sacrifice you're speaking of. To some degree, Jason and I are in the same boat. I mean, we've only been doing this for 3 years, but we've put out a new episode every Wednesday for 3 freaking years, and that blows my mind when I think about it. And we give up Sunday afternoons, we give up Friday nights. Sometimes we have to do this on our lunch break if it's a national artist who's on tour and they can only talk to you at 1:00 in the afternoon or something. But the level of commitment that you're talking about, I get it. I feel your pain. I know I can totally understand what you're talking about. And I don't think most people that view the finished product have any idea. I mean, they probably acknowledge that there's some work that goes into it, obviously, and some preparation and that sort of thing. But if you broke down the number of hours per week that you pour into this, they'd be astonished.
And I mean, especially if you look back at the archives and break those down, because as I mentioned earlier on, we were doing 4-hour programs. And then when Raw Time rolled around for a while there, we were still allowed to do 4-hour programs. So not only once a week, but twice a week, I was doing 2 4-hour programs that had a couple of hours of setup on the end and an hour of teardown on the other. And, you throw in all the drinking you had to do to take those phone calls, man, we've got, half a day already.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you taped, first time you filmed Jason?
I remember that Kevin Roberts was the one that documented some of my first time seeing Jason. I remember the first time I took stills, which was Triple X, David Span's band, and Watchtower at Steamboat.
Wow, yeah. That was January of 85.
Wow, huh? I'm thinking I don't have any of my own Watchtower footage from like the Ritz era. I'm thinking we probably did Dangerous Toys first, and that would have been about 91 or 2, you say, Jason?
Yeah, you did two shows in 92 that are like my favorites.
Yeah.
And one of them was better. One of them was better than this is just my opinion. One of them was better than the other, probably performance or just where the cameras were stationed or whatever in the editing. But I always pretty amazed sometimes at the live soundboard. And you know what your finished product was pretty fucking good for just being like, okay, we're going and we're taping and here it is, and you just had to mix it. Were you multi-tracking audio then, or was it just a board tape mixed with some live camera mics?
The former. So yeah,
Yeah.
I multi-track now, and I'll just say before I forget, I think Jason is like one of the only friends in bands that has never performed in my studio live. So hey man. But
because I'm afraid.
yeah, I know you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But back then, there's a couple things that went on. So and just to final that, we are taped now, so we can, you know, edit the multi-track and the monitors.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good.
But yeah, back in the day, I would stand on a chair with the suitcase camera, and I was just doing open mic for the room, and then I was like, I bet if I plug a cable into the soundboard and then into the mic jack on the camera, I bet it sounds pretty good. And so I did that, and it was kind of dry, but it was a soundboard, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And when I listened to the playback, I realized when I was pulling the cable in and out, like when it was halfway, left channel would stay camera mic and right channel would be soundboard. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So I'd have to put my earphones on and like wiggle it till it was right. So that was step one of figuring out some of the better sounding audio.
You could get the room is going into your camera mic, but you're still getting the dry mix off the mixing desk.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then when we took the multicam out, which was that truckload of gear, it was left right. It wasn't multi-channel, but it did have a little 6-channel mixer. So I took the stereo board feed and I ran 2 mics in the room, and I just put my cans on and went, that sounds pretty good. And then that's how all the stuff you're referring to, Jason, became a thing.
Yeah, and I remember that's when it started to take on a new life and sound and look semi-pro shot.
Yep. And that's where we're at today, man. I multi-track it. We run, 16 channels or whatever, and I go home and I mix it. I run it by the band. Sometimes, for instance, the band's snare went, and they took the snare track and redid it or put samples in there and sent it back to me, and I fold that in, and then I master that out to like 4 or 5 4K cameras we use now. I edit everything at home after the show so I can pick the best shots and make sure it's as professional as I can possibly get.
I love this kind of production because if you like the band enough to put your time and effort and care and love into it, because that's what it fucking is. And the band is, if they're like, yeah, whatever, and then they have no right to get mad at you because the snare was all farty sounding.
Mm-hmm.
They can't get mad. Oh man, that's the thing. Well, you didn't give a shit when we were there, and if you care, I shared all the files with you, and you didn't. So I have a show to do, and I was invited, and blah 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 blah. If I wasn't invited, you would have fucking told me. So the scheduling thing, the calendar thing, that's a whole next. That's like, hey dudes, when are we going to rehearse? It's the same thing. I go back to it's exactly like being in a band. You have to schedule this shit.
Yep. You have to be serious about it. You have to not want to just play for beer is a good example.
Yeah. Yeah.
There comes a time when in your, whatever it is you do, that you cannot work for beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just can't.
What are some of the most memorable shows you've taped?
One I want to talk about that's hilarious is I never forget. We changed the way we do things because of the first band that acts to play live in the studio. Our content was shot at location most of the time. Like I had either a video given to me or I shot live footage and we played those back. And then Lee and Donnie and the boys in Porcelain Grind were like, can we come play in the studio? And I'm like, sure.
Wow.
What do you do? So I'd had like 2 microphones in the room, and I was like, set up over there or whatever, and so we did it. But Donnie had been to see the Dangerous Toys the night before, and he caught Jason's shirt, which he was very proud of. So he wore it on the show. and he had his tight pants on, and well, we had a monitor in the studio, so he wanted to see how good he looked through all of the songs. And I think it was maybe 2 songs in, and it went from just admiring how wonderful he looked into sizing up his box on the camera.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, all right, starting next band we have, that monitor has got to be turned away from the band. So we don't let the band see the monitor when they're taping anymore.
Right. So they cannot aim their bosom towards the shot, towards the camera eye. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me jump in real quick. Hold the thought, because the shirt that he caught at the Dangerous Toy Show is a shirt that I hand painted. It's a Beastie Boys shirt, and it said "Rhymin' and Stealin'," and it was a hand painted shirt that, if I recall, I wore in a pinup mag in like Circus magazine.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite shirts, but I did decide, I'll just paint another one, and I did a strip tease and threw it off, and I'm glad Donnie caught it. I'm glad someone who's a friend of mine caught it and was down with it. So,
exactly. Yeah, man. Yeah. That was a story for life I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, that's a good one. I have some moments that go back. Tell us about the Milla Jovovich taping. Where was that? What year was that? Where? I'm not. I don't want to guess. I can guess, and maybe I'm right, but I don't want to. Tell us about that.
Good. All good. So I'm gonna have to try to think what month, but the year was '94. It only matters because essentially, Milla was one of the records that I got through Raw Time. And we were like the only show playing the video, and I thought it was great. It was like eclectic, Ukrainian themed music mixed with pop. It was produced by Rupert Hines.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So I was a fan, and she came through to play Cactus Cafe in early '94 and did an in-store appearance at Tower Records.
That's right, on the drag.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I went in there, and she had been on the cover of a High Times magazine at the time. And I brought that in, and the label, I think it was EMI at the time, set us up to do a little liner with her. Hey, you're watching Raw Time. So I knew I was going to hang out and do that, and had her sign the High Times. And, I was a fan and supporter. So I went back there, and we did the liner for the show. When she was signing the magazine, she had noticed I was wearing a surfer shirt that had a weed leaf up here.
Okay.
And she's like, sign, and stopped and looked, smiled, signed, looked again. And she's like, do you know where to get any? And I was like, say no more. Say no more.
Wow, we're talking Milla Jovovich.
Yes.
Sounds like she's part hippie chick.
No, you think?
Yeah. But I wouldn't have thought that in like modern times, where she's the face of the franchise Resident Evil. You know what I mean? You wouldn't think hippie chick. You would think like
whole other world.
Yeah, action star. She's a fucking action star. She was John Wick before John Wick. It's kind of.
Did you hook her up?
Of course.
I love it. I love it.
Between the Tower in Store and the Cactus Cafe show, we took care of the issue, and then hung out in the van all day. Her and Chris, her keyboard player, who's one of the kindest, most amazing, talented musicians I've ever met in my life. And, she did what you do when you get those things. And then when she got on stage at Cactus, she was just giggling pretty much through the whole show.
Well, so the music must have just been super, super chill. You recorded the show.
Yeah, that's up there. But so the big one most folks have saw was at Liberty Lunch. Essentially at that Cactus, because it all bridges together. At the Cactus Cafe show, goes back to the dedication of doing TV. The Cactus Cafe show was a Saturday night. We know what I did on Saturday nights in the 90s. And I was like, I gotta go. It's 11:40 and we're on the air at midnight.
Oh,
My crew has a band set up. Bevis Griffin was playing, and
wow,
I gotta be there. So I ran out. I ran out of the club. I was on my way to the car, and I hear Dave, and I'm like, oh, I guess it's somebody who watches NBC. And it was Milla leaning out of the window from her dressing room and asking me to come hang out after the show. And there was a line of people waiting to meet her, and I was like, I got to run up there and explain what's going on, So I ran up there, and I'm like, hey, what I do is going on now. I gotta go. And we exchanged numbers and said, when she came to town, we'll hook up again. And so I went and did the show instead of hanging out all night and partying with Chris and Milla and her band. So then I went and did the show, and it sucked, and it was done. But so she called.
It wasn't that bad. Maybe compared to some with Milla Jovovich, maybe.
Well, Bevis didn't have a great night. It's hard to play that game. So yeah. Anyhow, she called, and we did a phoner on Raw Time, and she said she was coming back to town with Toad the Wet Sprocket. And I'm like, oh, great. We'll get the good gear, and we'll come out and do it right. And so I got 5 cameras set up for that gig, and we rolled in and Liberty Lunch, and this was June of '94, I want to say. Wow. I may be off on the months, but it was '94. And we were, setting the gear up, and Robert Barton has a great story. He was on our production crew at the time, and he's from the Texas Music Show back in the day on Access, one of those shows I watched before I went on. He joined my crew. So we're setting up all the gear. James and myself are going and running cables and getting those huge cameras set up and tripods. And the Toad the Wet Sprocket manager comes running out all freaked out like, oh, we can't have any video in here. And Robert was like, yeah, we can. And they had this whole interaction and put him in his place. And we shot the video. It's on YouTube. And it was probably one of the most amazing videos I've ever created.
Wow.
There's a photo that you share from time to time on social media of you with Jimmy Vaughan and Stevie Ray Vaughan. And is that related to any of your tapings, or is that just you happen to be at a gig and you caught them?
Yep, I was a big fan of all of the Vaughans and all of the blues in probably about 83 to 87. I spent a lot of nights at the Antones on Guadalupe. And it was funny because Clifford, I felt like he took me under his wing for what I was like the kid that was at the blues bar, and he'd always tell me just these crazy stories and, little quips like, you can't learn to play the blues, you live the blues, and it just happens. And like, he would tell me, oh, these people are good and this one, no, and all this stuff. So I would always go see the Vaughans, and I went to all the T-Bird Riverfest, the New Year's Eve bash with the T-Birds. Became good friends with most of the guys in the band, and Chuck Leavell specifically when he was playing, an amazing keyboard player. And we got pretty tight, and he invited me to go to Houston to see them one night after hanging out at Antone's when they were jamming somebody, I don't know who, but it wasn't like a T-Bird gig, but they were in there playing. And I was like, well, hell yeah, I'm going to go to Houston with you guys, And so I went, and they had a show with, it was the T-Birds and Charlie Daniels band.
Wow.
What is the station over there? 101 KLOL? Was that?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And so I was back at the pass. I was backstage chilling, and saw Charlie Daniels come in and got a photo with Charlie Daniels.
Awesome.
And then I saw Stevie and his lady coming in with Jimmy. And I just said, hey, man, let's get a photo. And that's that photo, man. It was like 80, I want to say it's 85 or 86.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you ever tape any Stevie performances or Jimmy performances? I would guess you did, but.
Well, I taped some Jimmy stuff later in the day when he did a benefit at what is now Come and Take It. It was Antone's at the time.
Right.
But Stevie, I have like live audio cassettes of, but I wasn't really doing my thing. And, they were signed, so you'd have to go through hurdles to take care of all of that. I used to go to school with Stevie. Had been married to Lenny for a while before they divorced horribly. And I went to school with Lenny's sister. So I got to like hang out with that group of folks, seen Stevie dozens of times and helped them fix his carburetor one time.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Far out, man.
Far out, for sure.
That's a lot of legend in a short time.
Dude, it was fast forward.
Let's talk about Bill. Let's talk about Bill.
Bill, who are we talking about?
Bill Hicks, right?
That's right.
It's one of those things
because
that
I believe it's either infamous or famous or legendary. It's one of those words. You pick one.
Yeah.
Where you and Bill sitting down at the studio just talking about, because it's not him doing a stand-up, it's you guys hanging out chatting.
Yep. It's really
what year is that? What year?
94.
Okay.
Like months later, he was dead.
Right.
Yeah.
He was already a budding comic and was starting to gain momentum right before he passed. Yeah.
Yep. That was the last video interview he ever did.
I knew that.
Yeah, man. It's odd how many folks that I've interacted with that I didn't know who they were to the degree of who they were. Bill is one. So he would be at the studio a lot with Kevin Booth, my buddy Kevin Booth, and they were doing like, Ninja Bachelor Party or any number of little clips that they worked on at Access. So while I was there doing Capsize, Bill and Kevin were there editing, and we'd meet up at the picnic table and discuss the Bible or something and hang out.
That's got to be code for play tiddlywinks.
So, I knew Bill was into comedy. I knew he did stand up, but I wasn't sure to what degree or whatever, and Kevin said, "Hey, Bill wanted to come on the show this week. Do you have a slot?" And I'm like, "Sure." What is he going to do? He's like, "Well, he wants to talk about the Waco thing." And I'm like, and he's got a gig at the Cap City. And I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course." So he gets there that night and walks in and says, "Hey, what's going on? Who's doing the interview?" And I'm like, "Oh, interview? Yeah, I thought you might have just like been doing some stand-up or something. So what do we talk about?"
Oh,
and
shit.
he's like, "Well, we can talk about, of course, the Waco thing. We can talk about being thrown off Letterman a few weeks ago." And I was like, "Yeah, right." And he's like, No, yeah, I was on Letterman and they censored my spot." And I was like, "Whoa, yeah." And then he was like, I guess we could talk about the HBO special I have in Europe." And I was like, "Yeah, right." And he's like, "No, yeah." And I was like,
So you didn't realize that he was like this bad motherfucker because he didn't come off that way, because he's just
I wasn't like,
he's a knucklehead.
Bill Hicks fan.
Well, you figured it out that he was just a knucklehead from Houston, and then all of a sudden he's not a knucklehead from Houston anymore. But he is still a knucklehead from Houston.
Aren't we all like a knucklehead from wherever, man?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So, we went out there and chatted. And I'd say if you watch that, the first half of it, you'll notice there's like just me and him talking, and just he talks about the things he wants to talk about, but we're just chatting, and about halfway through, I look back and the band that was supposed to be next on the show is waiting in the wings. And I'm like, "Well, I appreciate you coming, man. And, we're going to move on." And he looks at the phone, he looks at me, and he said, "Man, I'd really like to take those calls." And I'm like, I look at the band, they're like, "Go ahead, go ahead." And I'm like, "All right, you're live." And then the last half of the show is him. That was one of the only, if not the only, performer we've had on taking live calls that did not get one bad call. Everybody was like, "Bill Hicks, Bill Hicks."
Oh,
like,
shit. Wow. Okay.
People obviously knew who he was, because by the time they got on the air, they were like, "Oh my God, oh my God." And so that's how that went down.
Wow.
And you said that was his last videotaped interview?
Yep. He drove out to Florida to do some shows. I think he did a radio interview, and then he drove home to his parents and passed away.
Wow.
Heavy.
Wow.
So
Hey,
heavy.
did you ever go to film a band or tape a band and get there and find an opening act that just blew you away?
Oh man, almost every night of the week when I was doing the back room shoots, that was one of my things, man. I would go, and usually I would gravitate to shoot shows where I knew one band was good and there were three other bands playing that I could tape. And I'd go tape probably a bigger chunk of the band I knew, but at least 15 minutes from the bands I had never heard of. And man, there's so many bands that I became aware of that way. And Napoleon Machine Gun was one. They were on one of those Pariah shows. I heard they did a reunion show recently. It's crazy.
Yeah, San Antonio band.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Who else comes to mind?
As far as bands that I really became a follower of, I think I got into Near Dark that way. I had caught them at the Black Cat Lounge, and man, they became one of my favorites. Oh God, what was it? It was Quentin's band, Pony Trap. I didn't even know it was Quentin's band, and I stumbled onto that. So there's kind of a duality there with those guys.
Yeah.
There's always somebody out there that just you never know, and they blow you away. I mean, there's a band I saw recently at ABGB, and I had gone to shoot someone else. They're called, well, I say recently, it's probably been about 5 years now, but a whole other musical thing than what we've been talking about, but a band called Pelvis Wrestling. They're blow me away, man. Really eclectic, and now they're like on KUTX and playing all the cool places and doing well.
Wow.
But yeah, there's always one, man. A funny story is when Raw Time was on, they'd send people through to do interviews and whatnot. And I guess the band Blur had become pretty big in Europe, and their first tour over in America to try to play it big, to get big, they were playing all the small venues and stuff. And they sent Blur over to do Raw Time to do an interview. And it's probably 91, maybe 92. I remember it was in the little studio, so it had to be pretty early on. And they came in, and we had the video, and I set up the chairs, and all of them came in, and we had the little lavalier mics back then, and had them in, and I had the bio, and I was like, all right, let's do this thing. And albeit I was asking bio questions, which who likes that? It sucks. I get it.
Yeah.
But they were giving one-word answers. I was like, so you came to the United States from Europe, you had this great following, and now you're looking to blossom in the United States. What do you think of the towns here? Great. I was like, oh, about 3 of those out. And I was like, all right, well, here's the video from Blur. We're going to cut to that, and we'll be back. And I cut to that, and I said, see ya, go, bye, bye-bye. And tell them take off.
Did you kick them out of the studio?
Kicked them out of the studio.
They didn't want to be
We're just
there.
a Blur.
They didn't want to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. But
Yeah.
Who's been the opposite? Who did you have in the studio that you maybe were aware of, and maybe you were even somewhat of a fan, but once you sat down and got talking, they just really blew you away with either their intellect or their sense of humor or their knowledge of music or whatever?
one of the first one that comes to mind wasn't in the studio, and I've yet to put my hand on the tape, but I think I might have it in a box that I just went and retrieved from John Moore, who's been helping me with storage. He's producing a documentary on Access that's yet to been released. So when that comes out, it's going to be amazing. It's called When We Were Live. So he's been doing a bunch of my footage, and I went and got some boxes. At the Austin Chronicle Awards one year, I caught up with Lloyd Maines and got to sit down unexpectedly. We just picked a room and started chatting. And I knew so much because I'm a big Lubbock fan, like Lloyd Maines, Terry Allen, Joe Wheatley, Butch Hancock, Jimmy Dale. That's speaking my language. So I just went on and on and on with him, and we just chatted. And he was so great to hear stories about, you know, folks, Jesse Taylor, and just all the stuff I admired. And at the end of the interview, he was like, "Where are your notes, man?" And I'm like, notes, man. I'm just a fan, you know. And he was very impressed. I was very impressed. So that's the first one that comes to mind. There's a lot of people that impress me in many ways. Van Wilkes has played in the studio a few times. He's a legend, man. He goes back to
Yeah.
Fools in the 70s.
He's badass. Me and him have had this super long, well, since the 80s, respect for one another. Like
Yeah.
anytime I see Van, it's just like, oh man, you're the king. No, man, you're the daddy-o. No, you're the king, bro. So yeah, that's really cool that you have that relationship with a lot of that. I don't want to call it old Austin, but you know, Lloyd Maines is it. You can't really get a bigger name as far as legacy and legend.
Yeah, totally, man. He's got nothing but talent. I love that
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
I was really stoked when it happened. I think we captured a really good moment when Nathan interviewed Godzilla Motor Company. I thought that was cool. Y'all debuted Wreck, I think, on the show. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. I think that you're right. Who did the sit down? Me and Bobby, or was
Yeah,
it
you and Bobby and
Ben?
Nathan did the interview.
Chris?
It seems like, was Chris there for one break, it seems like?
Chris might have been there too.
Yeah, we definitely didn't have your drummer.
Yeah. Which one?
I think Keith was in it at the hot minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No stories about Keith.
No, can't go there. But so you know, the interesting thing about the longevity here, what would you, I feel like we're going backwards a little bit, but I just want to bring it up again just to emphasize why are you still doing this? You obviously have a job, you have to pay bills, and this is a complete passion project that's a project. You don't really call it a project after a while when you've been doing it. Fill in the number. How many years? 25, 30, 20, 30?
Approaching 40. Like, what is it, 90 to
Yeah.
19? I mean, I was taping in the 80s, but I was on TV in 1990. So,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Doing it somewhat under the professional name. Right. Why?
Man, it's gone from so many things, and it always will be that I'm a fan, right? So first and foremost, I'm a fan. I think secondarily, I'm a nerd. I like electronic toys.
Man, you are in the right fucking room right now, bro.
Yeah.
There's some fan nerd shit going on here. That's what this is.
Yeah, man. I think, so to be clear, I wish I had a job. I do a lot of 1099 work. So if you're looking to hire somebody like me, please let me know.
well, let's do it. Let's do an ad. What do you do? What can we hire you for?
You know, honestly, this is kind of a weird thing, and one of the main reasons maybe that you haven't seen what I do go bigger is because I have this weird thing, not that I'm opposed to it at this day and age, but when I start working in my field of expertise, I can't do it for fun. So like I used to work for the Austin Music Network, and I would put in 40 hours a week editing their videos and doing their productions. And then Saturday would roll around and I was like, oh man, I got to do the show. So I don't know that I would be exploring work, but I am very capable in all Adobe products. I can edit pictures, videos, creative mind, cut it together, shooting, camera expert. I can do all that.
Audio too.
I have been doing courier work more than anything, which is like the yin and yang. So like when I go do Z, I'm better at doing A. So A to Z is different, you know?
Yeah.
I would do anything that paid the bills well. Honestly, I am capable of a lot of things from, you know, I've been in insurance almost 20 years at one point. Customer service. I do courier work mostly now. I've been applying for medical couriers because it pays well, you know, but and if you got money and you want to put my name on the check, let me know. I'll look into it.
I get what you're saying though.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people assume that because of my background, they think that what I do for a living is interview bands and write for magazines and stuff.
I still think that about Dave.
I know.
About both
A lot of
Daves.
people think
About
that's my
both
bread
of the
and
Daves
butter.
here.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that's my bread and butter, but they don't know that, you know, I have a 40-hour a week straight job, if you will, day job, whatever. But I hear what you're saying. It's like, as much as passionate as I am about music, if I did it 40 hours a week and then tried to do it in my spare time for the excitement and the passion of it, that would be diluted because I'm so worn out from the 9 to 5 grind. So I hear what you're saying. And then it's like, I almost prefer it to not be my job so that I am excited about it and I can pour my passion and my heart into it and make it the best it can be, rather than just checking a box because the clock is ticking.
Totally. And so that brings me back to kind of answering, why I do it. And it'll always be the tech nerd. It'll always be the fan. But these days, I had discussed early on in my relationship with my now wife, how while I have all the toys and I have all the knowledge and I have all the capability, it's landing flat. Why don't I like what I'm doing? Why am I just discouraged? I left doing TV to do it on my own, and I've got every opportunity to go in every club. God bless every club in this town that lets me walk through the door and just do my thing. It's a beauty. I'm blessed. I'll never forget it. But I just didn't feel a connection. I got a YouTube channel with like 15,000 subscribers at the time, but I was still just like, I don't know, man. It's just not what I want to do. I surely don't want to be the guy with the goth girl videos on YouTube. I need some people to see the art that I'm doing. And so what I figured I was missing was the local connection. We had a long talk about passion and art and being an artist. And I realized, man, I am missing that local connection. And at the time, I was living out of town and concerned that I couldn't access the studio facility again. But a little research led me to the fact that San Marcos is now included in their area for being able to produce. So that's what got this new ball rolling again. At the time, I was living in the San Marcos area, and I took some new courses to go back and do TV again. But I was like, it ain't Dave TV. This is Capsize. This is my passion. This is why I started. This is what I need. I will not do this if I cannot get as many people from my history to come back and do this with me. I reached out to Nathan and James right away. And James was like, all right, where do I sign up? He was like, you're dragging me in again? I'm like, yes, I am. And Nathan was like, I'm not doing TV. He was like, no, I'm not doing TV. And then finally, I took a picture of me in the studio taking the course. And he's like, when's the course?
Oh.
And he took the course, and his famous line for the first few months we did this last incarnation of the show with him on it was, I'm not doing TV. I'm here at the studio. I don't know what this is, but no, I'm not doing TV. He was doing TV.
Yeah.
And we had some great times, and we left on a high note. Unfortunately, on the way back from New Mexico, we had taken a great trip, and we were coming home, and got into the airport. A lot of drama with the flight home. As soon as we walked in the door, my phone lit up with a call from Nathan's daughter, who I never hear from. And I was like, I don't want to answer that call.
Mm-hmm.
And my bride said, you got to. And that's when I learned I lost my best friend, man.
Yeah.
And the next day we were back in town, I had a band scheduled for the TV show where he would have been right there, and everyone's like, are you going to cancel? I'm like, no, I can't cancel. He'll kick my ass, man.
Yeah.
So I went in and we did the show, man. And I've been doing it every week since. And it's tough to look out there and not see him, but he's a part of our history, man, a big part of it.
Yeah, he's a part of everybody's history in this town. If you're even remotely involved in music, Nathan had an impact somehow. Huge loss for the Austin music community, and I know it hit you especially hard because you have such a long history with him, and you guys have accomplished so much together. And man,
I had to keep going. Like now, it's sealed. Like this is my death rider, man. Lifers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many years was he with you as a partner? How many years were you guys?
He came on in 91, man. And, he probably didn't have more than a year off the several times that I told him, don't come around here no more. But, like anybody, over 30 years, you have ups and downs, right? So,
Yeah, that's normal.
yeah, he was a part of it from 91 until then. So, just as much as me, and the passion that he brought and the bonding that he did. Like, I'm Mr. Task. I'm like A to B, run the cable, run the mic, do the mix. And he's like, hey, 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 and getting everybody like in the mood. So we all had our little pieces, man.
Yeah.
But that's why I got to keep doing it, man. I think, Steve Wonderbread made a film. It's lifers. We're lifers, man.
Yeah. You mentioned one of the reasons you do this is you were a fan first. Do you remember what was it that got you hooked on music as a kid? What album or concert or whatever? When did the music bug bite you?
It was definitely the 70s. My grandparents were who raised me, and they were the type that had an old 78 RPM record recorder and sat around the campfires playing songs with the family. And big country music fans, all of the real stuff, Hank Sr. and all those old cats. And I grew up in a house with that stuff on all the time. They took me out to see Ernest Tubb, legend, when I was very young. And I was like, what's all this live music? And it was really neat, And I definitely
was that around here? Was that around here?
I was let's see, Ernest Tubb was actually in Llano. I think it was 78, 77 or 78.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about culture. That's culture.
Yeah, that was my actual real first live show. And I got to see a local band play like Led Zeppelin covers every time they play in Llano when I was like a kid.
Yeah.
When I got to Austin, man, I'm trying to think of what the first live concert I went to, and I want to say it was the Cars and Nick Lowe, February of '82.
Holy shit!
Yeah, sounds right.
That's a good gig. That's a good gig, man.
Oh, what a gig! The Cars, amazing. Elliot Easton, come on.
Do you remember the venue?
The Irwin Center.
Irwin. Yeah. Okay, right. Okay.
Yep. Irwin Center.
The Irwin Center in '82.
Oh yeah, man. And then I remember my grandfather on the 1984 Van Halen tour dropped me off in front of the big Frank Irwin Center sign out front with $50. I felt like a king. I went in and I bought like 2 shirts, the Van Halen necklace, the tour program, food, drink, $50, man.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore for $50.
I remember Ted Nugent at the Irwin Center when t-shirts were $7. I remember hollering out Free for All from the floor at Ted Nugent. And he's like, what's that? Free for All. And they played it. I felt like a king.
Yeah, man.
What did you, besides music, you obviously have this passion for video. Was there anybody, you talked at the beginning of the conversation about how when you got here, there was already some people that had like local cable TV shows and they were sort of doing their thing. But on a bigger scale, were you always a fan of cinema? Like, did you go to the movies and could you appreciate at a young age, like special effects and camera angles and that sort of thing? Were you driven by that, or was it all about the music and the camera was just something you took along and sort of eventually mastered it?
Yes and no. I will say with movies and angles and shots and stuff, I'm the most annoying person in the world to watch TV with, because my wife will testify, you're trying to focus on like what the show is about. And I'm like, oh, did you see how they did that zoom shot and they panned around? That's all one shot. I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, that happens around here a little bit too. I get that, man.
I don't really have that going back, but I have a similar thing of that, right? So back when I was young, I watched the Midnight Special and Blue Jean Network, which probably nobody remembers. Do you, Jason?
Not Blue Jean Network, but
yeah, man. So Blue Jean Network full-length concerts, and Midnight Special was cool, but they just had a few songs or whatever. Blue Jean Network was like a 90-minute show, or it was two bands in their 90 minutes, so 45 each or whatever. But it was Billy Squier, Kiss, Cheap Trick, Heart, Blondie, the drill.
Classic rock, yeah.
All live.
Wow.
In my eye, as it happened, but as we know later, the tough stuff was cut out. But
yeah,
it seemed like a flowing concert, and I always paced, not consciously, but I realized when I look back at how I do what I do to this day, I pace it on the way those shots happen, man. If somebody's singing, let me see the singer. If it's a lead, let me see the lead. If it's the drummer, let me see the drummer. Shoot with your ear is what I tell everybody who comes to work camera for me. And that comes from the Midnight Special and from Blue Jean Network.
Yep.
Wow. That's what I wanted to hear. That's good stuff right there.
That's perfect credit to... If you're not a fan, you need to have someone in your ear, if there is comms, right, to say it's the guitar solo, dummy, camera 5. It's the guitar solo, right? Missed it. You missed a fucking guitar solo, and that's in their ear where there's a camera. What? I didn't do anything, but that's the live edit. That's someone in the editing room if they're not flicking on camera 5 and turning off 4 or whatever.
I became much nicer as the years went on. I'm a lot nicer, but when I had intercoms, which we don't use now, when I had intercoms, Nathan would have told you so many stories, and James can tell you many stories where I have said things like, "What the fuck are you doing? Do you even know what a camera is?"
Wow.
But yeah, I don't do that anymore.
Well, it can be annoying when something really badass is happening live. And your live editor, that's different. I mean, if you have the footage and you're gonna edit in post, that's a different game, as we all know. But which I prefer. But that's
what we do now. I much prefer it.
That's right. But when you're doing it live and you can't get the edits right, when you miss something phenomenally magical, say that 5 times fast, it's gone because it's fucking live.
Yep. It is gone. Yeah. It's funny because just going back to the Milla thing, it doesn't really matter. But when you said that was the only show from back in the day of live switching that I ran a B-roll deck. So while I was live switching, I had a second deck going that with this hand, I would click the backup cameras and send those cameras I weren't using to that tape while the live switch was going on this other tape. Smart. And that's one of the reasons that video is so fantastically magnificent or whatever.
Phenomenally magical.
That's it.
Phenomenally magical. Yeah, phenomenally magical.
Who have you wanted to have on the show as a guest, or who have you wanted to film and they have so far been elusive? And obviously we all want to say Paul McCartney and Elton John and all that stuff, but within reason, within the Texas music community, the area in which you specialize in, who are some of the ones that got away?
Jason McMaster's band. I want him in the studio. I don't care what band, but I want you to come play in the studio. That's one of my life goals, if you're asking.
New Year's resolution. We'll get something happening.
I don't care who.
Yeah, we'll get
band.
We'll get something. We'll get something happen. We'll get something. We'll make it happen.
There's a lot of acts that I would have liked to have had in there. What's a good example? Like I would have loved to have had Pariah in the studio. You see, for me, it's a whole nother game. While I may have caught a band in a club, what we do in the studio is what I feel my art is, not that doing it on location isn't, but what we do in the studio is kind of where my passion for the art lies anymore.
Okay.
So I would love to have had Pariah in the studio at the time we were doing it. It probably wouldn't have been as great as it would be professionally at this time, but the moments, man, God bless Sims, dude.
Yeah.
Like that would have been amazing, there's some folks I've never just asked and probably could have had on. Like I'd love to, I did have Jimmy Dale Gilmore trio come on with Jesse Taylor.
That's cool.
I'd love to have the Flatlanders on, but I'm scared to ask.
Right. Right.
Ask them.
Oh, yeah, a lot of the times the folks that I haven't had on are probably because I'm scared to get a no.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
because I guess honestly, like when I say that out loud, I go, well, the passion in me comes from being the opposite side of that. When someone approaches me because they want to play the show, but they're scared after seeing somebody thinking, how do I get on this show? But they just reach out anyway and go, how do I play, man? And I'm like, when are you open? And I put them on the show. It's happened a lot recently with some younger people, like teenagers and 20 somethings that saw something somehow online and was like, we have a band, man. How do we play? And
Yeah.
here's a date. And they're like, I'm like, yep. And
Yeah.
that sets me on fire, dude.
Well,
This kind of goes back to what Jason was talking about earlier. If you want the Flatlanders on your show, you should just ask them, because you probably don't give yourself enough credit because you're too modest. But they might actually go, wow, we know that guy. He's got a body of work that's incredible.
right.
Sure, it's no skin off our back. And of
Yeah.
course, they can always say no, but you might be surprised how well known you are in those circles that you don't think you really add up or whatever.
And it's really weird that you say that one is a great example, because I do know all three of those cats. Like I went to all their solo shows every time, and like the Flatlanders was this mysterious thing that used to be and never happened, and then they got back together. Like, I'm like, what? But I went to see Butch all the time. I went to see Joe all the time. I went to see Jimmy all the time. And now that they're back together, dude, that would be a dream. So yeah, hey, if you guys watch Talk Louder, I'm easy to reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of those guys watch Talk Louder.
You never know.
Back to the kids having the teens and the 20 somethings. Hey, I have a band. Well, I have a TV show. We want to play your TV show. Okay, done. Here's a date. Right?
Yeah.
So this is something that I called what you do many, many, many things, but providing a service is the reason. You're not out to do this to provide a service, but the giant trophy and the Dave Prewitt statue you mentioned earlier that I'm going to lobby for one day. That's it. That's why. And it's probably not something that you would think of when you just, it's just a nerd with a video show, well, that's not, when you think about the story you just told, it took 2 seconds to tell that you've got a camera and you got a room and you got some microphones, and these kids see that and they go, man, that's awesome. Can we play? Like, hey, can we come to your house and play at your party? It's the same thing. It's the same fucking thing. And
I think that's why we work so well together, right? Like the band mentality, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's full circle. It's kind of all coming from the same place. And it's like going to the studio. It's like, hey, we wrote a song. What do we do with it? We'll come play it on my TV show.
Yep.
But how do you feel like the younger, the newest generation is hearing about your show? Do they see it? Do they meet you in line at the Taco Bell? What is it?
It's crazy. I guess it's mostly YouTube. I don't think a lot of people watch TV anymore, even though, like I said, when I came back to do the show, I felt like the piece that was missing was being played, seen, and produced locally. So that's why I came back to the studio to do it on TV, is to get that local piece back. But I feel like they run across it on YouTube most of the time. I am very busy on socials. I do the TikTok and the Instagram and like all of it, and they'll see a little clip from somewhere and be like, whoa, what's that? And then they reach out, and it's that simple. And I know, Jason, you work with the kids in music, and there's nothing that fuels your fire more than somebody young who has that mentality of music's changing my life. As we get older, we come and go with the power of that. You've got a great rap about, the jacket and the patches and the fury and the passion, and that's what it's about. And when you see that in somebody, usually a younger person who's just getting into the scene, it puts your fire back on. So that stuff is why I do it.
Yeah, wanting to inspire young people and having a, it's not just because you love rock and roll, but you know what? It is. Just because I love rock and roll, I want more people to like rock and roll the same way that I do, that I did when I was a young person.
Yep.
But, not to go too deep on it now, there is something that's happening in the world that is keeping young people from understanding how music can save their life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to blame it on parents. I'm not going to blame it on, the what their situation is at home, but it could be that something that's stifling that open-mindedness to art. Because, I always preach I'm not on my soapbox. I'm just mentioning these things. I always talk about, some households, there's no freedom, and I mean that in a generic form, freedom for that young person to even just dress the way they want to or wear their hair the way they want. It's something simple that's very mundane that shouldn't even be stifled at all. Because I feel like I'm not a parent, but I feel like parents can easily be embarrassed in public when they show up and their daughter or their son's wearing eyeliner and has purple hair and tattoos and they're 13, or whatever it is. And I feel like sometimes that's like, my kids can do whatever they want as long as they sit down for dinner on time, get straight A's, and if that's all they have to do, they can be whoever they want to be all the time. And as long as they get a job and pay bills, and you know what I mean? Like, that's parenting, like doing the right things. You can be what and whoever you fucking want to. That's rock and roll, punk, that attitude, that mindset, that is important. Okay, now I'm on my soapbox.
That's all good. Even 1 foot is fine.
But the point is, things are different with young people now, and I blame a lot of it on COVID, because if you're in second grade and then 5 years of your life have been stolen away of your childhood and the way that you've developed as a person, you're not in second grade anymore. You're in like 8th.
Yeah.
You lost a lot of, you know what I mean? And I'm seeing it because I work for School of Rock. I see it right in front of me, and it's really sad, because I feel like that. Yeah, I don't know if we can, but the School of Rock and places of fundamental art, right? Because that's all we are, is fundamental art. It's what we sell, but we sell responsibility, and that's just hard, because if you were just like free for fuck all because of COVID, no school, all right, and you lose any kind of sense of responsibility. These kids don't do their homework, and I'm talking about learning, a Slayer song.
Yeah.
Okay, if you don't learn that, you're not getting any dinner unless you come out of your room knowing how to play Angel of Death. Nope. All right, play it for me. Nope, that's wrong. Back to your room. No dinner for you. Play Angel of Death correctly. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Totally, man.
Think about us when we were in 8th grade, and our only job to get dinner was to learn a Slayer song on guitar. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, there's something pretty badass about that, but I think that
I try to worry about how to fit patches on my FFA jacket.
Anyway, I think that what you're doing, and whatever you're doing for a young person to go, man, that's badass. I want to play rock and roll on your TV show.
Yep.
I think that that's just as cool as, wow, show me how to play that riff. It's the same fucking thing. Someone sees Dave and goes, hey, Dave, wow, can my band play on your? It's the same thing as, wow, that was cool. Show me how to do that. It's the
Yeah.
same thing, man.
I totally relate to Dave in this sense. You know, he and I obviously both love music, and to my knowledge, Dave's not a musician. I'm not a musician, but I think one of the things we got into this for in our respective fields is we we enjoy music so much that we want other people to be as excited about it as we are.
Yeah.
And my way of relaying that excitement is through the written word and now on this podcast. That's how I did it. I did it through journalism. Dave is doing it through film and broadcast and television. And I think because we're not musicians, but we're excited about music, we still have a need to be connected to it, and we want other people to feel it, as excited about it as we are. And this is our avenue for reaching those folks.
100%. I've bought guitars, I've tried, and I ended up giving them to my older son, Will, and that's why he's a musician now. My younger boy, Ryan's a drummer, so the music went that way. I know G and D. If you got any song I can do on G and D, we're set. I'll play.
Oh man, we can start a Bob Dylan tribute band tomorrow.
But yeah, man, it's a passion. I love to see people get inspired by music. It makes me happy, and I love people when they see what they've done and can appreciate it. And even if they don't like what they did, they learn from it and learn how to do it again the next time.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it as well. I love when a band tells me, I've never been able to have my parents see what I do because they're not going to come to the club. But this was such a great example. I sent it to them and they loved it. So they watch what we do and see their children in a band.
That's an outlet, that a tool, dessert, call it whatever you want, that is helping spread the word.
Yeah, man.
And helping bonding and connection. So just kind of basic social awareness too. When you, I want to switch a little bit. So Bloody and Bruised, The Untold Story of the Back Room. I want to hear you talk about that. I want to hear, I mean, I have an opinion that the trailers that are the most recent trailer, the long trailer for this film that we hope will come out in 24 or 25, about our stomping ground, one of the the legendary Backroom Club in Austin, Texas. This film, the trailers, I feel would not be as important right now more than ever with the recent passing of Nathan. Dude, the shit that he's saying in the movie, the shit that they used in that, I don't think that there could have been a movie if they wouldn't have had Nathan in it.
Yep.
The movie would be a giant chunk down on my 5-star rating before the fucking thing even comes out without Nathan. The shit that they got gold from him, and it's in the trailers.
And from Dave's archives too, play a big part in that movie.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they wouldn't have even been able to shoot the short version of the film that's actually the one longer than the actual trailer. But yeah, I'm just talking about trailers and the 40-minute version that I believe the three of us have seen. Tell us how you feel when today, when you see Nathan on there, just preaching, just telling the real. Do you feel the same way I do? That it just wouldn't even spark? It's fucking sparkle, bro.
Absolutely.
It's sparkle.
I feel spoiled because I got that guy every weekend for decades, right? Like, he always brought the game, and he always made the difference. And we would not be what we are without what he brought to our game. And that is what he's doing there. it would not be the same. It would not
Wow.
have the passion. When he spoke, you listened. He was funny, but he was serious. He
Yeah.
communicated to you in a way that you could understand and made you feel like it mattered. Like you knew this guy wasn't making it up. Like this was facts. He lived and breathed it and communicated it well and was somebody you might want to be best friends with. And that's gold, man.
Man, if your party sucked, you need to call Nathan.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Man, this
100%.
party sucks, man. Hey, Nathan, can you come over and fucking plug this party in, please?
And we kind of did that on TV for years, you know.
Yeah,
people
you
calling
did.
in, and man, we try to do our best, you know. So,
Yeah, you did. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that I feel like the movie is going to be a great tool to you know, continue the legacy and the stories and make the stories be a visual tool for what the Backroom did for us all.
absolutely.
But I just feel like you know, Nathan just killed it in there for those guys, and now that he's gone, it's just it's such gold. And it's going to mean something different to everyone who knew the guy when that shit hits the big screen.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird day to see that, man.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I'm sure the world is going to feel all of these things we've said with him. It's funny. I'm sure you feel both of you to a certain degree, the same about whatever legacy you're proudest of. And when John Boudreau and the gang reached out to me about doing the film, I was very protected. You know, this is some stuff that we collectively, not just because I hit record, but the bands and the people involved, we put a lot of care into. And when you talk about, hey, can I put your thing in this movie? I'm like, tell me more. And I was a little at first concerned, to be frank, that they were going to be going into the 2000s version, because to me that turned into a different thing, you know.
I know what you're saying, and can I jump in for 2 seconds and go, I felt the same way about being protective.
Yes. So I was like, okay, well, so you're not just going to take my Ritalin kids and cruiserweight footage, right? You're going to go a little further, right? Like, and they were like, actually, we're going back to the 70s. I was like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's quite a different companion story than I ever thought it was going to be after I've seen the trailer. I mean, I had a little bit of doubt going all the way up until I saw the 40-minute trailer.
There you go.
The teaser.
You know what got me was the passion. I sorry to interrupt, but when I saw John and Boudreau's passion about the game and all they put into it, I was like, oh, they might just get it. They might just get it. Yeah. And I was all in at that point.
Yeah. So when someone calls you like John or Boudreau, they're interested in, they call Dave Prewitt because they want some footage of, say,
hold on, Dave, Metal Dave, hold on a second. Who the fuck else are they going to call, bitch?
Well, this is, yeah. So what I'm getting at is, when someone calls you, what does your archive look like? I mean, what kind of chore is it to find, you know, Pariah in 1988 or Near Dark in 1990? And and you've got multiple gigs from all these bands. So what is it? What's the process for locating and picking and combing through stuff like these guys probably did?
In my mind, I love the question, Dave. I'm sorry. In my mind, I hear beep, beep, beep. It's a forklift with pallets and shit of tapes.
It's all of that stuff over there. Like
okay.
All of that you see. So for sure. My first thought is I go to my hard drives and hit Control F, and I'm like, oh, please be archived already. Please let me find what they're looking for so I can just drag and drop it. But when it's not, so just like the tapes you see behind Jason, I've got a garage full I just got like a carload full of tapes that John Moore was holding on to for me, and put them in there. And I've got a carload and a half to go that I had in storage, just no room. And now we've got a beautiful place in South Austin, and I've got a little dubbing rack set up, and I'm releasing stuff to my YouTube from the archives on a pretty regular basis. So I need to start going through everything. So I'm getting it home. So there's boxes and crates and little boxes and big boxes. And the thing with that is there's no chart to refer to what's in what, and it often changes, but it's kind of like muscle memory. Like if you were to ask me where Pariah at the Continental Club in 88 or 9 was, I'd be like, I know that box, and I'll go get that box and I'll go get that tape. I hope no one else has to worry about that when I'm gone, because you will not.
Yeah.
There's no way to find them. But I have a very good muscle memory of like what's in each box. And there's no math to it. They're not categorized by alphabet or year or genre or venue. But I have like a picture in my mind when I see, oh, there's that Savias tape. I know down here is going to be the Hurlot one, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know that I work with Ahmed at School of Rock, right?
Ahmed, Helmet Head.
Ahmed Garcia. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I love Ahmed. Great guy.
Yeah, he is a great guy.
And what is that saying, Dave? I may be metal and I may be Dave.
That's classic. Jason, I don't know if you've heard this story.
I don't know this. Tell me the story.
Somebody came up, I want to say it was at Red Eye Fly.
It was.
We were at a show at Red Eye Fly, and Dave comes up to me and he goes, some guy just came up to me and said, "Are you Metal Dave?" And Dave said, "Well, I'm Metal and I'm Dave, but I'm not Metal Dave."
That's really great.
There's only one and only.
But
one.
you were just telling the truth,
Classic.
man. You
That
were
was
just
classic.
telling the truth.
And the Red Eye
Wow,
Fly.
that's good.
Good times, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That building is condemned.
Yeah.
It's
I believe
condemned.
Wow.
There's signs on it. It's condemned. Yeah.
Really?
It's falling into the creek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the ground is, you probably were not supposed to build anything on there, but they probably went, this will be fine. We're just going to need a bigger boat. I think that it's just the ground is crumbling into the creek right there. So,
Wow.
that bar that is like, where the stage, and there's that bar they just had the curtain in front of. I saw
gone.
someone one night, lean up against the curtain and go flop,
Yeah.
almost go all the way down.
Yeah.
Kimberly from One Eye Doll dropped her guitar mid-set and jumped over and pulled him back up.
Wow.
Jason, where was that? We saw Airborne playing on some patio that backed up to that creek.
That is Empire Control Room.
Mhm.
Oh, right.
That's Empire Control Room, and that's on the creek, but it's a little further north. It's just north of there. Wait, no, it's south. It's just south, but it's the same. It's beyond Beerland. It's like it's around the corner.
I just remember thinking these guys are about 2 steps from. I think there might have been a railing, but at one point they're climbing on the picnic tables and whatnot, and I'm thinking, man, one slip and somebody's going backwards over down that creek.
100%, man. Absolutely.
That's the outdoor outdoor picnic table area between the big outdoor venue that Empire has now, which is a beautiful venue, by the way.
Yeah.
And then the inside, the back door to the inside stage is right there. So in that sort of like triangle there, that's where the railing is to where you're talking about, where we saw Airborne that year, and they fucking smoked.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Well, Dave, tell people where they can find you. You mentioned social media. Here's your chance to plug your various channels, et cetera, whatever. I know people are going to listen to this and go, oh, I want to see some of his footage or some of the stories that you're talking about, the Bill Hicks kind of thing. So tell people where they can find what you're currently doing and some of your archives.
Absolutely. So the show is on TV. If you have Spectrum and Grande and you live in Austin, we chose Channel 10 because that's what we did forever. Channel 10 was our home, and I'm on Channel 10. The first couple seasons, I've run that show. I don't know what our air date is, but I'll just refer to the 2 seasons have been on at 10 o'clock. But I'm going back to the logic that I've always had. What's my audience? It's people coming home from music gigs, from venues, from drinking, from late night work or whatever. That's mi gente. Those are my people, man. So I am switching starting on season 3, which begins in March 2024. Still Channel 10, but we're going on at 2 a.m. So 2 a.m. on Channel 10. That is, I understand, probably irrelevant because nobody watches TV. So I'll also say there is an app for iPhone and Android if you do want to watch live. And the app is called Austin Public, just like the facility is called. It's gone through many names. It's currently known as Austin Public and has been for a while, run by the Austin Film Society. So Austin Public is the app. But the go-to for most folks is my YouTube. So if you go to, and mind you, this is confusing, of course, like anything, the branding of the YouTube was done at a time that I was pushing raw time. So youtube.com/raw time, RAWTIME, is my YouTube channel. But not only does it have decades of raw time footage, but decades of capsize footage, clips that never made the show, clips of bands in concert at various venues that I shot for fun, everything you'd ever want from my archive at some point. There's something on my YouTube, youtube.com/raw time. If you just go to YouTube and you search, say you want to find Pariah, just search Pariah and raw time and it'll come up, so that's the easiest way.
How long did it take you to get decades of your stuff on the cloud, so to speak?
It's a work in progress, but I'll tell you what, man, I was one of the first people pushing the internet envelope. I was putting, they were at the time real video files and WMVs on my website. We were sponsored by a place called the Eden Matrix, and I want to say it was 98, 97, 98.
That sounds familiar. I feel like I've seen that in like a URL.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Eden.com. But it's so old, it was eden.com/capsize. You can go to the Wayback Machine and still find some of that.
Yeah.
And, I had like 10-second video files and stuff. And people were like, they're never going to watch video on the internet. It takes an hour to download. So, yeah, see how that went. But so, I'd say about 98, 7, 8, maybe 99, I started seriously just poof, 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 put it on YouTube. And then when I referred earlier to like 2001, when I was doing a lot of digital editing at home with Chris Carrillo, and I took a couple of cameras and mini disc recorders, the first place I put it was YouTube. So it would just go and go. And I just kept pushing it, man. And I'm approaching 20,000 subscribers now. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe and click the bell so you get notifications.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, I applaud your longevity. I applaud your stamina. I mean, it's just crazy to me that you've been doing this. I remember countless gigs I'd go to, and there you were standing on a table or whatever with your camera. And you've been doing it for an awful long time. And we're grateful because you've documented a scene that we've enjoyed, we grew up in, and we're grateful to have that documentation, that archive that's so rich in Austin music history. So
I'm blessed to be welcomed into the fold, dude. It's crazy to think that I can still go into clubs and do what I do after 30 plus years. Wait till you see this Watchtower video Jason and I are working on, man. It's insane. So
yeah, it's going to be a hell of a project, and it'll be free on your show, on your site, from any kind of streaming. It'll be all over the place, and it's going to sound and look amazing. And it just goes to show that, as far as we go back, we're still here.
Yep.
We're still doing the same thing, and technology has been our friend. Well, it's been your friend, not mine, apparently, because I'm struggling, but we're going to get it fucking done, man. I'm probably going to be doing it because the weather is going to get cold in Central Texas. So I ain't going anywhere all weekend. So I'll probably be doing some editing.
I'm looking for those emails, man. And what an honor to be on Talk Louder, dude. I really appreciate y'all asked me a long time ago, and I was like, No anxiety, and I ain't got nothing to talk about. Leave me alone. So thanks for asking me back, and I'm glad to have a label, an envelope to push, and
Yeah.
be on a show with some of my biggest metal heroes. You two and all the people you've had on the show is a blessing. So thank you.
Yeah,
Man,
you're more than welcome. We can easily do a part 2 because there's lots of stuff that we can, lots of rabbit holes we can go down with
100%.
with what you do in historical Austin. So it's kind of
We
important.
should all get together when Bloody and Bruce comes out and do a mega show with everybody, right?
yeah,
That's going to be when the film gets finally sees the light of day.
Yep.
There will be Talk Louder will have its place, and we'll probably want to talk to a bunch of different people that are in the film.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. You're a huge part of Austin music history, and like I said, we're grateful for all your dedication and your archives. What a rich history you've captured, and I don't know how you do it after all these years, but I'm glad you do. So,
Passion project, man. Passion project. Sean Somm used to say, "Rock louder, man."
yes, yeah. We know. We know.
We stole half of the song title.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I'm so old that when I say talk louder, I'm usually like, talk louder.
I know. Dave, thanks so much for being here. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with our special guest today, Dave Prewitt on the Talk Louder podcast.
Yeah.